I don't even want to get involved in that shit show.
Yeah, we're gonna move the pirates. I just had to play the theme there for a bit. Yeah, kind of wish that we discussed this behind the scenes a bit more. Honestly, though, it's like before we get started, Alex, your thoughts on the first three films?
I think I only watched the first two films because I only catch them on television when they were airing, and I don't know when they're gonna air next time. But I was just genuinely entertained. Like the first one is a fucking classic.
Mm-hmm.
hmm Yeah, I would have to agree there, where it's like the first one, at least in my opinion, is definitively the best out of the series. And
Oh
the other
yeah,
ones, like 2 and 3, they get close to it, but I feel like they just don't
they're so and
hold up
so.
as well.
They're so and so. If
Yeah,
that's the word you want to
like
put it.
they're
No, I
not
wouldn't
bad
say
by
that.
any
I won't
means,
say that. I won't say that. That's why we're
But
having this top. That's why we're having this topic. I, for
yeah.
one, if anyone's already subbed to my other channel, I am not a big fan of five. I unironically think, and if you've read the little thing in the description, you know that I am a big fan of the original trilogy. I really enjoy two and three. I honestly
there's a
think
five.
there's five
Yeah,
movies. Yes,
yeah, and I too hated 5. I did not like it.
four is forgettable. It has its issues, but is nowhere near as bad as five is. Like
Yeah,
five legit, like it gets Jack wrong, and this might be either a Johnny Depp thing or a director's thing. Then again, remember Amber Heard. Amber Heard was in his life, so anyone's gonna act like that. It makes sense. But there's also like writing issues, pacing issues, continuity issues up the wazoo. Which anyone watched that video know, like it's literally like how the the catalyst of that film somehow hinges on Jack giving away his compass, something that Jack has done multiple times, which is
yeah,
very freaking stupid.
Yes.
So I highly doubt Rossio. It was either Rossio or Elliot, one of the two writers, working on the film, and I doubt they had any input on it. I think they had the main concept, and they just let whoever else like continue writing it
yeah.
because
I saw your little shit post you made on that on your other channel. I thought that was freaking great. It's just
yeah,
showing every single time that Jack has given his compass to somebody else, or somebody else has taken his compass, and it just shows the fucking scene from 5 of the Salvador waking up.
Salazar, yeah.
Salazar, yeah.
Chuck Sparrow's giving away the compass. It's like, are you kidding me? But other than that, like the first three films, I would definitely say are really good. Like one is fantastic, two is amazing, three is really good, but it has its issues. I will
Yeah,
stand by that.
no,
I'm
no,
not. I'm not
no.
gonna blindly say that three is this masterpiece like a Last Jedi fanboy and say, well, no movie's perfect. Like no, three has issues that drive even me insane. Okay, if like I do at some point in my life, hopefully soon or maybe later this year, do my own edit of those movies, like all three of them, because even there's deleted scenes in the first one that actually would be really cool to watch, and there's some deleted scenes in the second one that literally need to be in the movie. Like, if any of you know, there's the liar's dice scene. Like, there's an extended version of that scene, but they cut out, and I'm guessing they did that for time. And
Yeah.
others like scenes in three that one of which is really good, but the effects are not finished for it, so
Mm.
that kind of sucks. But like there are scenes I would definitely cut down, like the like I've said in a Discord server in general, if anybody paying attention, like I've said that the locker in general should have been cut down. Like, and if it were up to me, I would have cut out Jack's hallucinations altogether. They really pop out, especially since they're only in this film, thank Christ, but they honestly don't fit. But like you can't really edit them out because that'll also mean editing out a scene where he breaks out of the Dutchman jail cell. So, which is a good scene because Jack notices Hoffpin Power Inches, which is something that Will, like how Will got him out in the first film. Davy Jones is more menacing. Barbosa arguably is more sympathetic in some cases.
Yeah.
Even though he does bad stuff in the movie, and like later comes to work with our heroes, but like Jones is the guy you're scared of, while Barbosa has his motives and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah. Because there's times like you said, yeah, like Barbosa is a bit kind of more pathetic in some circumstances. And is also a bit more, I guess, sympathetic. Um, but at the same time, he's also a really good villain because the dude is just fucking like relentless in how
Yeah,
he wants to get his immortality back. I mean, his mortality back.
yeah,
Where meanwhile, yeah, Davy Jones is just he's got a fucking presence.
mm-hmm,
And I feel like the music in 2 was really really good as well. I still fucking love the Davy Jones theme.
yeah. It is his introduction, and you hear like the theme behind it, like as you slowly see him as he appears, and his first words is, "Do you fear death? Do you fear that dark abyss?"
It's
And then
so fucking good.
coercing this one scared dude into becoming part of his crew.
Mm-hmm.
In which like the lore of it is really really good, and I do remember saying this on a watch party at one point, that how Davy Jones keeps getting his crew is really cool, and it's never fully like specified in the film. It's something you notice, and how he uses the Kraken to get ships to be like shipwrecked, and he goes on deck and he says his speech, "Do you fear death?" and he tries to get them on his ship 100 years before the mast. But there's a catch to that. It's like, oh, you get to be on the Flying Dutchman for a century, and thus your debt is paid. But the thing is, you lose yourself when you're on the ship. As Bill Turner, Bootstrap Bill, says to Will, like, there is no leaving a Dutchman when you've sworn an oath. It's like you're stuck on there.
Yep.
As you see, like, another character like Wyvern, who's literally a part of the ship, and that's where all the faces and all the like the looks and how like everything like kind of blends in, like everyone's like if you actually like look at the Dutchman itself, like that, some of the stuff in the detailing on the core of the ship, that's not detailing the core, that used to be somebody. It's like when you
Yeah.
actually think about it, which is really Lovecraftian in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, I
like
know what you mean. I was
really,
just gonna say, like, it definitely has a lot more of a Lovecraftian vibe, especially in a literal sense of just tentacle monster shit.
yeah,
Where it's like, yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's just so fucking good and
that's
well
a hundred.
done
I
with
bet
how
that's
they handled it.
100% like Gore Verbinski, the director. I'm guessing that was 100% him, because he definitely like has an eye for that type of stuff, especially in 3 and such, where like I don't know if I might have to look up if he ever read a Lovecraft story, but there are some aspects to his films that are very Lovecraftian in a way. Like Cure for Wellness, I've heard has some parallels to like Bioshock and other like Lovecraft stories, and that's a film he directed. So
Yeah.
it's quite clear
And
he has some imagery, and he has a bit of a love for that type of stuff, and he worked
yeah,
that into the sequels.
yeah. It's also just like something I believe hasn't really been done before, where you're incorporating like Lovecraftian elements into like a pirate story. Um, which actually, when done well, works really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, it's fucking cool. Like, I don't really know how else to put it.
Yeah.
To
Granted,
anyone who hasn't watched those films yet, or who hasn't seen them in a long time, I definitely recommend going back and checking them out. I know I'm going to.
mm,
Same.
yeah, they're really good though. Granted, At World's End has its issues, and I'll pretty much get into that right now. Like, as much as I love that film, I kind of get some of the criticism it gets. It is definitely a long film, and honestly a bit of an unjustified length in a bit, because there are some scenes that you can cut down. There are some like aspects like the locker that you can actually like cut down to a shorter length. If it were up to me, if I was in Gore Verbinski's shoes, I would have either cut out like certain aspects like hallucinating Jack or some of the weirder stuff in the film. And if any of you don't know, a big like a big idea of example is like the crab scene in the locker. Like the locker itself, like that part felt a little too long. It did feel like you were watching a very different film. Like you go from Singapore with Will, Elizabeth, and Barbosa, you see them try to get to like the edge, quote unquote, to like which is basically like this little place, like this long waterfall that leads you to the next world. And then we reach Jack, and it's this ridiculously long scene of him on the Pearl in the middle of in the locker in the middle of like this little desert island, which honestly is a good scene. I would have done something different. I'm not a fan of how Verbinski did it though. It felt weird and not in a good way. It felt very out of place. How Jack's just hallucinating basically himself doing the ship, which you could have done a better job of saying that this is Jack's personal hell, so to speak. That this is basically Davy Jones' personal purgatory, right? So, and that Jack has the Pearl, but he can't sail anywhere. He can't do anything. There's ways of doing that. When he's trying to tug on it and he's trying to pull it, that I like. But like the scene goes a bit too long, and the crabs like part, them helping Jack, I think was a bit weird. Even though I get the point. The point was that was like Teodelma, aka Calypso, like trying to get Jack into the sea, quote unquote, because it's not the real world. It's the locker. So another thing I'll definitely say is that yeah, I think it's the blocker. That's generally my big criticism of the film, I would say.
Yeah, the locker scene was definitely a bit out of place.
Even though there's some good bits of it, like when Teodelma explained to Pentel and Rigetti of like the people like in the water and like the people in the boats, like explaining how this works, because this is technically purgatory in a way, and because Davy Jones is meant to be the ferryman on the river Styx, so to speak. He's meant to guide people who died at sea to the next life, but David Jones has not been doing that for a good while. So that I like. It's just I wished most of this stuff was cut down. That's a good criticism, honestly. But like things like the these are weird criticisms I hear about these two films all the time, is the supernatural aspect or how dark the films are, which honestly they are, but it fits the tone. It fits the escalation though. It fits how dire things are. Like,
and I really don't get the criticism of the supernatural aspect, considering the first one had already established that there were supernatural elements to this world. It wasn't all like completely grounded in like, trying to be
Big Bad Evil was literally a guy trying to die because he had a curse.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't at all trying to like ground itself to a more realistic aspect of the world. It was like already trying to dip into supernatural stuff. And I feel like the second film, or even the third film, just trying to like continue that theme was overall just like a really good choice. Because why would you go from establishing that there were supernatural forces in the first film to playing the rest of the films straight, in a way where you just kind of try to take all that out?
I can actually reply, well, the only actual criticism of the whole like trope of these films is that the cursed crew aspect. Like, I'm forgiving of that, of the first, second, and third film where you're going up against the cursed crew of the Black Pearl and the crew of Davy Jones. But when it comes to Blackbeard's crew, the Queen's and Revenge crew being zombie pirates, and the Ghosts crew of the old Spanish ship in 5, like, that I think was overdone. You could have done something better in those two movies, in 4 and 5. But for this trilogy, it works, it fits. But when you get to that 4th and 5th film, that's when it feels like, okay, that criticism holds some water there.
Well, yeah,
where it feels like you're doing it over.
Just repeating the same thing that previous films did, and you're not really doing anything different with the supernatural elements.
Exactly. That's what 4 and 5 basically do in a way, arguably to worse extent. And in comparison to Chest and World's End, there is a story, especially since they shot those 2 films back to back. There's an actual story to those films, and also they're very much a sequel to the first one. Even though that film's story was very indeed wrapped, there were still consequences to Will, Elizabeth, and Norrington helping Jack escape, because that's what led to them getting arrested at the beginning of Dead Man's Chest.
Mm-hmm.
Will's journey to being the honorable, like, law-abiding citizen, right? The law-abiding, like, individual, to being to honestly, like, ending out to be not only the captain of the Flying Dutchman, but also, like, someone who's about as devious and about as, like, scheming as Jack. Like, watching At World's End and, like, marathoning the entire movies back to back, it is amazing seeing his journey from being that naive individual to being like someone like who has his own motives and stuff like that.
Yeah, seeing him go from just being like a, kind of run-of-the-mill citizen of his town and just, doing his day-to-day blacksmithing, stuff like that, to kind of picking up his father's legacy as like a pirate, was just really cool to see.
Yeah, it is.
And, like, on that aspect, not only really just, like, straight up picking up his father's legacy and, like, trying to just be like his father, but seeing how Jack kind of influenced his character, like you said, was also just a nice little touch on top of that.
Yeah, it was. Think like me, it will come to you. Like, yeah, that's a good line. There's a lot of good lines in this film, in those 3 films.
Yeah.
When it comes to 4 and 5, however,
yeah,
not so much.
Ugh. Especially 5. 5 just felt.
I didn't hear good things about them, especially from you guys. So
Yeah.
I might just dodge them. 4, I might give it a chance. 5, I'm not gonna try it.
Yeah, avoid 5. It's don't even, like, you can't watch that movie like back to back from the other 4, like, at all, because it just breaks continuity. Like, it's insane how little it follows up. And
Disney basically gave Pirates of the Caribbean the sequel trilogy of Star Wars treatment, where they tend to break and throw a lot of the established continuity and lore straight out the window, and just try to make everything like really flashy and epic, and just try to revive the franchise, I guess is how they do it, but in a very poor way. Yeah,
like 5 is like the fakest of the 5 movies, oddly enough. Like, the effects are like they're sometimes good and they're sometimes worse. And my brother pointed this out and saying, yeah, Gore Verbinski directed it. He had a specific filter in Dead Man's Chest and At World's End. Like, it looked grimy and gritty. It looked real. 5 has a bit of that, but it's too bright. It's too colorful. When the other films weren't like that. The water looks fake. It looks like it was shot on a green screen. The other films, they actually were on like actual ships, and they were actually like in a not open water, but they were on like they were on a water source of sort, even though they weren't like in the open like sea and stuff. But it still looked real. It still looked like an actual ship sailing. like in 5, it looks like a CGI model, which really sucks, especially when there's so much wrong with the writing, direction, and even the acting. Even like characters are inconsistent.
Yeah.
Like Gibbs is also, this is something I noticed on another rewatch I did in the film. Like Gibbs just abandoned Jack instead of like, no, that's not his character. He would stay with Jack the entire time. He's best buddies with the man.
Yeah.
So him just saying, oh yeah, our luck's run out. All right, see ya, Jack. It's like, no, that's not Gibbs.
No, like Gibbs is literally like Jack's fucking bro. He's his
Yeah,
homie. Like
he's his right hand
he
dude.
does not, yeah, he does not just straight up fucking, peace out whenever Jack, you know, gets into trouble or some shit like that. Like, no.
Yeah, it's night and day. But 4 I would definitely say is more forgetful. I do think like the aspect of going and finding a fountain of youth is really cool. I will say that
Mhm.
it is definitely a sequel to 3. It is definitely it's a better sequel than 3 than 5 is to 4, like without a doubt.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Even though like the film definitely feels oddly enough the most disconnected of the franchise, because it does, like, Jack, Gibbs, and Barbosa are like the only returning characters. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're the only returning characters. Like everybody else, as opposed to 5, which brings back a couple of characters. Will and Elizabeth being one of the bigger ones.
yeah. 4 in a way almost seems like its own like side story
A
rather than being
spin-off,
like an
oddly
official,
enough.
yeah, like a spin-off rather than being an official like
That's the common criticism I
sequel.
hear. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it does very much feel like its own like standalone adventure using characters from the previous movies and just kind of, you know, going off doing their own thing for a bit. It
mm,
doesn't feel like a like a major event or next installment into the trilogy. And
yeah.
that's why think it'd be more forgettable because I mean, yeah, it just doesn't feel as it just doesn't have that scale that
Doesn't have that
the other
scale. There are
movies
no
did.
standout moments of the film. The villain, as much as I like Ian McShane, that's his name. As much as I like Ian McShane as an actor, he's a fantastic actor. His Blackbeard, I don't know if it's the director or the writers or him, isn't as intimidating as best. Maybe it's because of Bill Knightley's performance as David Jones is that good, or is because of the material that they gave to Ian. Like Blackbeard isn't as memorable or as stand out as a pirate's villain in comparison to the previous ones we've had. So
Yeah,
that's another thing.
which is weird because Blackbeard is like the only main villain I could think of other than like of course Davy Jones that actually has that level of like notoriety just in terms of real world
Yeah,
stories
yeah.
and media about him.
Yeah, because Blackbeard's like a real pirate. Edward Teach
Yeah.
or Edward Thatch was an actual pirate who, oddly enough, similar to certain Cape Crusader, used fear, intimidation to get what he wanted. Which, honestly,
Mhm.
how much cooler would it have been had it not been had Blackbeard not been supernatural, and he was just using theatricality and deception, that none of the
Yeah,
crew were zombies, and that he was legit like, hey, I need this thing. I
that would
may
have
have
been.
escaped death once, like, because apparently, like, Jack does say, oh, you were beheaded, they say. So this takes place, like, after his supposed, like, death, and, like, in real life, because in real life, Blackbeard was hunted down by mercenaries, and they cut his head off, and it took, like, several times to cut his head off, by the way. Like, he
Mhm.
was a beast, and when they finally cut it off, they threw his body overboard. So maybe in this universe, well, actually, Jack says that you were beheaded. They say, yet your body swam 3 times around his ship and climbed aboard, but it's never explained what he actually did or how he survived. We don't know if he made a deal or if he was just using magic. We don't know.
Yeah.
But like what I would have done to make him like more realistic and just say, no, that was somebody else. It's like I have body doubles, I have like other people like working for me, but this I'm legit like scared of. So
Yeah, I feel like it would have been a lot more interesting and a lot just cooler as far as his character goes if like
you cut out there.
supernatural elements of him and just but they still made it feel like he was supernatural even though he wasn't. It was all just him using fear tactics and getting into people's heads and fucking with them. Um, just using his wits and his intimidation alone, I feel like would have been a lot more interesting. And also like just a lot more unique and standoutish as far as like, the rest of the series goes, because the rest of the franchise is just, Jack and his crew fighting against supernatural, captains and other crews. But if they just played Blackbeard as just straight up someone you don't want to fuck with,
Yeah.
and just, have, like I said, have him just be like a normal human captain with a normal human crew, but like I said, just using the wits and the intimidation to very, very effective means.
Mm-hmm.
That just would have been a lot better in my opinion.
Yeah. The thing that Blackbeard is known for is saying like his hair on fire, wearing like a Pacific hat. He
Yeah,
only does that
usually,
one time. The one time he's introduced.
yeah, which I don't understand either, because that's like one of his biggest sort of trademark things was having
Exactly.
like the little bits of straw in his hat that he. Well, I don't think it was straw. I think it was like fuses or something. Or just like having his hair on fire.
Yeah.
And like the whole thing about that was just to make his appearance look more intimidating and more like, again, almost more like supernatural looking, like kind of going for like a devilish motif.
Yeah.
And yeah, he only does it that one scene he's introduced in, and then nowhere else.
And it doesn't look as good. I'm not trying to say that they need to set Ian McShane's hair on fire, but there's ways of making that look like it's supposed to look like an entire wall of smoke is just emitting from this guy. And honestly, I think if like anyone else like shot the scene, you just like pan down, you see his feet just walking, and you slowly pan up and like a shot behind him, and there's just smoke coming, and you pan around and just see the man just drinking. And and then you can do the little speech of saying, "There I was, resting, and I heard ungodly row among dagger," and then you can do that a little bit better, I
Or
think.
hell, I mean, they could have even just done something where, like I said, you had like the fuses or whatever that he just had like under his hat. So he puts his hat on,
Mm-hmm.
and these are these like little fuses or whatever that are kind of hanging out
Mm-hmm.
near his hair, but not like in it.
Yeah.
But they're all like lit up and smoking and stuff like that. That would have just been good enough, I
Yeah.
think. You wouldn't have to go as far as like actually lighting like the ends of his hair on fire or even using like doll hair or something and then just kind of integrating it into the rest of his hair. I feel like even just the fuse thing would have been good enough.
Yeah. Looking at chat for a brief second. Buxy Funk 5 had Marvelisms as comedy filling, which took up 3/4 of the movie, or at least the others held their comedy for quiet dialogue moments, which is very true, actually. Like, in terms of comedy, the first 4 were either situational or comedy, or talking based, dialogue based. 5 is definitely very Marvel in a sense. 4 had mermaid mommies and Indiana Jones-esque main villain death. I kind of agree, even though I would have done, honestly, I've said this to my brother, and I stand by this, that I would have done something a bit different with the mermaids. I'm not a fan with how they're designed. I mean, I do like the idea of them being like these man-eating like mermaids that use singing that lure men.
Like sirens.
They're sirens, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're not. Which I even said, I'm like, wait, they're not mermaids. They're sirens. They're that's a different thing. But whatever. In this universe, they're interchangeable. But I would have done something a bit different. Like, imagine if Guillermo del Toro did something like that. They would, like, the moment like one goes into the river, like okay, like one pops up, you have like the very hot one and their hair covering their breast because we can't have nudity in a PG-13 film, and she's like very beautiful, and but like she lures a man like into the river, and you slowly see her become like very fish like and very terrifying like, and like her face is all like, it has like these razor sharp teeth and fins like where her cheekbones are. It's like that would be much more like scary and more like standoutish
Yeah,
rather than what they actually did though. But I'm guessing they didn't want to scare people, or they were just weren't imaginative. But
yeah. I've brought this up in a previous podcast, I think. You know, that one Witcher cinematic trailer where it's showing off Geralt hunting down that one female monster. It starts
that
out with her singing, and
vampire, she's a type of vampire, I think, right? Because
I think so. She goes
she
invisible,
goes
and like
invisible. Yeah,
Geralt throws the dust bomb at her or
dust
whatever.
bomb. He drinks like a type of potion.
Yeah, I think that would be like that's just what you reminded me of, because she starts out as this like beautiful, attractive lady. She ends up kind of like flirting around with Geralt a bit, and then she kind of takes her robes off. But then, like right as she takes them off, she just switches into like her monstrous appearance, where she's all like disfigured and skinny, and etc. etc.
Yeah,
I feel
and
like that would have been a great way to portray the mermaids in that film.
yeah, and Blackbeard's death. I will definitely say that is definitely Indiana Jones esque. There, Bugsy. Thanks for reminding me of that. Like oddly, kind of comes out of like, I won't say comes out of nowhere. I'll say that is very brutal for especially for a Disney film.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
yeah, oddly enough, like as you just like see well, it's not the most graphic way of saying it. Like I'm saying it right now, like his flesh just coming just off of his bones, and you just see like a skeleton reach for Angelica. Like that's a good scene, oddly enough. And that's why like I even like had this in my head for a good while, and I've sent my brother this, and I have this concept that I have down where like the movie starts out with Henry destroying the Trident, and it's just hell breaks loose. It's like the Trident
Yeah.
wasn't just holding curse; it was holding everything down. So that's why you have all this manner of
Even
sea
Vikings.
monsters and sea creatures and evil creatures. The dead start rising. Like Will like goes to Henry and said, "What did you do?" It's like, "I freed your curse." Like, no, you didn't, you idiot. You ruined everything. Like, I'm not, that wasn't a curse, that was a duty I'm charged with. So now that I'm not even monitoring the souls of the afterlife, I'm not ferrying them, they're going to be flying everywhere. There's going to be ghosts, there's going to be curses, going to be flying all over the place now.
That would be really cool
That would
concept.
be a
Yeah, where
much,
it's like
and
Will gets a misconception of like, oh, the trident is it's the thing that is
Henry.
causing all these yeah, Henry, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
He gets the
The
concept
root
in his
cause
head like with the
problems.
movie where it's like, oh, if I destroy this trident, then I will destroy all the curses, etc. etc. But
Yeah, yeah.
when he actually goes to destroy it at the beginning of the movie, it just turns out that it was basically the only thing holding all these curses like to their localized areas, or means
Contain
of
them.
coming about. Yeah, where it's
Yeah.
like it acts as like the barrier between curses just kind of being their own localized things where they ain't widespread, to basically just unleashing them all and more upon like the entire
Like the astral
area.
planes like merging in Berserk as a good
Yeah,
comparison, and this being
yeah.
a cool way of bringing back Davy Jones, if that's possible, if Bill Knightley likes, he would like to prize the role and just bring him back and just have him be in human form, which would be a
Mhm.
cool change, and also have the whole, and the idea was to have the whole plot of the movie go to like Atlantis or go to some other like uncharted like location and find Hephaestus and get him to reforge the Trident and get him to fix it.